At a teacher inside a Toronto elementary school. Two teens have been charged in connection with the attack. Farah Morelli joins us live from outside the school right now. First, Farah, let's start with how that teacher's doing.
Well, Dwight, I've been speaking to students here at Lord Dufferin School. This is on Parliament near Dundas, and they tell me that this teacher has not yet returned to the classroom. We're told he's still recovering. This is now a Toronto police investigation, and a big part of the investigation is going to be video evidence. The video starts with pushing and shoving. The teacher yells what sounds like, "Get off of me." That's when things turn violent. 3 students appear to target the teacher, throwing punches and objects at him before the fight pours into the hallway. This video has been circulating on social media since last week and is currently posted on the World Star Hip Hop website. It now has more than 300,000 views and thousands of comments. Today, the Toronto District School Board confirmed the incident happened here, inside the walls of Lord Dufferin Public School. Parents and guardians of children who go here say they're in disbelief.
It's really crazy because you wouldn't think that would go on in a school, especially like this, because I used to go here too and nothing like that happened before. So in my mind, it is crazy.
They ganged up on him, so I don't know. It's just it's hard to, because when you're the teacher and you're trying to, manage the class, then it's very difficult to when they kind of just go on their own.
The man sustained non-life-threatening injuries as a result of this assault.
Toronto police have confirmed they were called to the school last Tuesday.
It's been alleged that 2 13-year-old boys got into an altercation where a man was assaulted. As of Monday of this week, the 2 13-year-old boys surrendered to police and both have been charged with 1 count of assault.
The TDSB wouldn't confirm more details today, only issuing a statement which said, quote, "We are deeply concerned about the events seen in the video, which took place at the beginning of last week. Toronto police were notified and are investigating. The TDSB has followed its procedures in responding to this incident, and while we can't speak to any specific disciplinary action, in general, physical assault can result in suspension and possible expulsion under the Education Act." Now, Dwight, as you heard there, the TDSB is not saying what kind of disciplinary action these 2 young boys will face here at the school, but we know they have been charged under the Youth Criminal Justice Act because they are so young. They were charged, as you heard there, on Monday and released, and they're expected to appear in court sometime within the next 6 weeks. Dwight.
Wow. Thank you, Farah. Remember, if you have a story you would like us to look into, just send us an email, torontotips@cbc.ca. More shocking video for you now. A street showdown caught on camera. CBC Toronto News was the first to bring you this video showing a woman with a stroller confronting a driver who ran a stop sign and almost hit her. What the neighborhood has to say about that intersection coming up in just 5 minutes.
I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, so I'm not under any illusion how the Prime Minister has and gets things that he wants, and I'm just stuck doing the best job that I can.
Okay.
That's the end of a phone conversation between former Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould and former Clerk of the Privy Council Michael Wernick. It was just released hours ago as part of Wilson-Raybould's testimony surrounding the SNC Labland affair. A conversation she says amounted to political pressure. Katie Simpson takes us through it.
What this recording makes crystal clear is that there was a deep ideological divide between the former Attorney General and the Prime Minister on what to do about SNC Lavalin. In the 17-minute conversation, Jody Wilson-Raybould repeatedly tells the Clerk of the Privy Council, Michael Wernick, she is uncomfortable discussing this issue. Wernick repeatedly said the Prime Minister doesn't want anything illegal or improper to happen, but that Justin Trudeau wanted all options to be considered as jobs were on the line.
All right. Well, I don't, I'm going to have to report back before he leaves. He's in a pretty firm frame of mind about this, though, so I'm a bit worried.
Bit worried about what?
Well, it's not a good idea for the Prime Minister and him as Attorney General to be at loggerheads.
Well, I feel that I'm giving him my best advice, and if he doesn't accept that advice, then it's his prerogative to do what he wants. But I am trying to protect the Prime Minister from political interference, or perceived or otherwise.
Wilson Raybould did not tell Wernick this conversation was being recorded, and that is really important context to remember here. In her written submissions to the Justice Committee, she says she decided to capture the conversation because she anticipated it would be an inappropriate discussion. And now that it's public, she says Canadians can decide for themselves. Trudeau and Wernick have both denied any wrongdoing. Wilson Raybould also explained why she decided to quit cabinet shortly after this story broke back in February. She says Trudeau telling reporters that her continued presence in cabinet was a sign she supports how the government handled this issue. That was a tipping point. Wilson Raybould did not agree, saying her resignation speaks for itself. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Ottawa.
If you would like to listen to the entire 17-minute conversation between Jody Wilson-Raybould and Michael Wernick, we have it for you online. Just head to cbcnews.ca.
No matter what happens next, our government will always stand behind you and will always fight for you.
Premier Doug Ford vowing to fight for auto workers in Windsor after Chrysler said they will cut 1,500 jobs there. We'll take you to Windsor for the very latest at 6:30. She went from elation to devastation in just 48 hours. A Toronto-based filmmaker is speaking out tonight after her work was selected by the Beijing International Film Festival. Then just days later, it was scratched from the list. Magda Gabasalassi joins us now. And Magda, the filmmaker says the political tensions between Canada and China were behind the change.
Yeah, she thinks this has to do with the arrest of Huawei's chief financial officer. And she shared some email exchanges that she had with festival organizers that appear to back that up. Filmmaker Maya Danofsky is taking on some serious topics in the movie In God I Trust.
And it focuses on racism and guns in the U.S.
Stop!
Her film was accepted into the Beijing International Film Festival. But just weeks before she was set to go, they pulled back their invitation.
They actually really loved the movie, and they've said this in a couple of emails. So it has nothing to do with the film. It has nothing to do with the content. They specifically said it was because of political reasons.
This is the most recent email she received just today. It's not the film itself that has political problems. It's going abroad. I'm sure you've heard of Huawei. The arrest of that company's CFO by Canadian authorities continues to be at the root of tense times between China and Canada. Never did this filmmaker think she would get caught up in the mix.
So I put my heart and soul into making this movie, and I had no idea that because of political problems between countries that it would stop me from showcasing my film to an audience.
An associate professor with the Munk School of Global Affairs says she's not surprised by this.
They do not want to be seen as doing anything that may defy central orders, because they want to protect their own positions, right? Otherwise, they might be punished if this is seen as an act of defiance.
Are you still holding out hope that they might change their mind?
I don't think they're going to change their mind. I honestly don't think they're going to accept any Canadian films from Canada at the Beijing International Film Festival.
International Film Festival organizers. We've also reached out to the Chinese consulate and the embassy, and we are still waiting for a response. Meanwhile, Maya is moving on. She is taking her film to the Beverly Hills Film Festival this week. Dwight?
Thank you, Magda.
You're welcome.
A woman was struck and killed at Bloor and Sherbourne this morning. It happened around 6:30. She was hit by a TTC bus, and investigators are still trying to determine if she was also hit by another vehicle.
Was traveling west here on Bloor Street, and it was somehow involved in the collision with the woman. Again, we don't know how or at what stage the bus got involved, but that's part of the active investigation.
The victim was in her 60s. Police haven't released her name. A confrontation caught on camera. A woman with a stroller nearly hit by a car. It's created safety discussion in that community, and residents say they're seeing more drivers taking shortcuts through their neighborhood due to the LRT construction. Now, the video has created a conversation and a plea for drivers to slow down and pay attention. Kelda Ewan spoke to the man who took the video.
It's a startling video. A woman crossing the street with a stroller. A driver ignoring the stop sign, almost hitting her.
There's a child in this! There's a stop sign!
And then, you know, she jumped on the car, like, okay, this is like getting crazy. And then the part that gets me is at the end, somebody else like came through the intersection and drove around the stroller.
Ryan Bessie posted the video online this morning. It happened right outside the home he shares with his wife and daughter, 1 block south of Eglinton Avenue East.
For the people that live here, it's, you know, every day we have to put up with, you know, all this excess traffic.
Residents say LRT construction on Eglinton has prompted many drivers to find detours on residential streets. Bessie's wife, Hishke, says many cars go too fast while failing to stop properly.
It's getting worse and worse. People are getting hit, accidents, and near hit.
In fact, just a few months ago, the Bessies captured this at the exact same spot.
Both of them like slowed down but didn't completely stop. And then they both went at the same time and just collided in the middle of the intersection.
For the many parents in the neighborhood, it's especially worrying.
You know, one misstep by one of our kids and it could end in tragedy.
The counselor for the area, Jay Robinson, said tonight she has taken action.
The minute we saw the video, we actually reached out to 53 Division to talk to the senior officials at 53 about what we can do. They actually sent officers out and have committed to sending officers out to that intersection more regularly. We also put into Transportation Services immediate request for watch your speed signs, and we asked for 2.
But most importantly, she wants to remind people
we need to slow down, take a deep breath.
Kelda Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
Monday is April Fool's Day, but this is no joke. Gas prices going up.
In fact, at the stroke of midnight, gas stations like this right across the GTA will increase by 5 cents net a litre.
The reason for the price hike, the Trudeau government's carbon tax takes effect, and McTague says there's another increase coming in about a week. That's when suppliers switch from winter to summer blend gas. That will add another 5 cents a litre to the cost.
Happy birthday to you. A milestone celebration. I'm Greg Ross at the Shepherd Village Seniors Community, where 11 residents, all between the ages of 95 and 107, celebrated birthdays today. They even had some cake. Well, it's good. We'll have their story coming up.
Colette, I hear winter is coming, and I'm not talking about Game of Thrones.
Yeah, no, you're not. Winter's coming back. You know, we're coming to the end of March this weekend, but really it takes till about mid-April when we won't see kind of wintry mix being a possibility coming back into the forecast. So here we go, and lots of components to this system. Of course, there's rain. Well, that's okay. We are into the season of spring now, but also freezing rain and snow, all associated with the system coming our way. So what happens is it'll start as some rain overnight tonight, freezing rain to the north. For those of you who might be traveling up into cottage country, I need you to know there'll be some slick roadways there. And then we're going to find that freezing rain passes off a little further towards the east and gets more significant over towards the Ottawa Valley if you're traveling in that direction. Taking off the words here so we can just kind of look at the contours in terms of what happens and break this down for you. So Saturday, staying as rain. This is the morning hours. Further towards the north, we get into the freezing rain line and then into the lighter snow, which will become heavier. By afternoon, still some rainfall. Periods of rain will be heavy at times. And then as we get into Saturday evening, we get into a break in the precipitation around the GTA. That will be nice to see, but it may be somewhat short-lived because on the backside, the winds are going to turn towards the northwest as the system is departing. Looks like some wet snow snow, at least some wet flurries, but maybe even some light accumulations, even for the city, possible by the time we get towards Sunday morning. Now, it'll be very wet stuff, so it should be melting away, but the risk of seeing these accumulations, and if you're wondering, well, what happens after that? Maybe later in the day, Sunday, we get into some sunny breaks. I know it's hard to believe when we're looking at today, daytime highs like this with double digits. By Sunday, we'll be hoping to get to about 2 degrees. For now, we're in the clear. This doesn't last long. Here's that system right back here towards the Midwest. It's going to make haste, and that means those showers develop overnight tonight as it moves in. The temperature drops to 2 degrees. Tomorrow afternoon, 7, and then that colder air turns that rain over into some wet snow and a wintry mix. I'll have more details on this storm, Dwight, coming up.
Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
25-year-old Zach Nuruddin was murdered 3 years ago, beaten and robbed by 3 complete strangers. As Ali Shahsan reports, Nuruddin's family was in the courtroom today as 2 of the suspects were due to be sentenced.
It's tough. It's definitely tough. It's tough seeing his parents the way they are right now. I've never seen them like this ever before.
It has been an excruciating 3 years for the Nuruddin family. While grieving Zach's death, they've gone through a mistrial, a retrial, which resulted in the convictions of 2 men, to today driving all the way from Ottawa to hear the punishment that these men will face, only to have the sentencing hearing delayed another 2 weeks.
We come here every time and we have to live the memory of Zach, and see, especially today, there are lots of Zach friends you know, just talking about memories, the lives, and it is very frustrating.
Nuruddin was leaving a Midtown bar with some friends when they got into a fight with another group of men in December 2015. Nuruddin was severely beaten and died. Patrick Smith will serve an automatic life sentence for his second-degree murder conviction, so the Crown is arguing the length of time before he gets the chance at parole. They want 14 years. They want to see Matthew Morera, who's been convicted of manslaughter, get 10 to 12 years in prison, and a consecutive 2 years for robbery. The third alleged attacker is being tried separately. Since there were so many Nuruddins in court today, the victim impact statements were read. This way, when they all reconvene here April 10th, they can get right to the sentencing decision.
It'll never be the same. You can definitely tell there's something missing. There's a hole, you know, there's a void. You can never fill it, but at least there's a peace that we can get justice.
The family tells me they will never feel closure. Even if a sentence was handed down today, the wound from Zach's loss will never close. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
The implications of the House's decision are grave. The legal default now is that the United Kingdom is due to leave the European Union on the 12th of April, in just 14 days' time.
A third defeat for Theresa May as Britain stumbles towards Brexit. We'll take you to London for the very latest after the break.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
It was third time unlucky for Theresa May's Brexit deal. Parliament has again rejected her EU divorce, meaning Britain may crash out of the European Union in 2 weeks. The original plan would have had them leaving the EU today. Chris O'Neill Yates tells us where plenty of frustration is being voiced on the streets of London.
The protesters who've been gathered here all day are not too happy about the outcome of this vote. Theresa May lost the third vote in the House of Commons by 58. This means now that the whole process of Brexit is up in the air. Theresa May had put forward a plan that wasn't palatable to enough of the members of the House of Commons. Therefore, now they'll be looking at next steps. One of those steps could be to go back to the alternative votes, those indicative votes that were held a couple of days ago. None of the 8 options got an absolute majority, so right now they may explore some of those, like a customs union. One thing is for certain, because the deadline of tonight at 11 p.m. wasn't met, that they'll have to ask the EU for an extension. The date for the EU to say goodbye to the UK was the 22nd of May. That's unlikely that that will be met right now because this was voted down. Right now, the leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, is calling for Theresa May to resign. So in this country where people wanted this to move ahead one way or another, both the Remain camp and the pro-Brexit camp, this remains as stalled as it ever has been. And the thought that nobody wants to think about is that this could yet drag on for another couple of years. Chris O'Neill Yates, CBC News, London.
Brexit demonstrations have forced Global Affairs Canada to issue a travel advisory for Canadians in Britain, warning them of possible violence in the wake of today's Brexit drama. The advisory mentions confrontations between demonstrators and security forces around the parliamentary buildings, Westminster Abbey, and nearby subway stations. Among those protesters, a group of people who've walked to London from the north of England. Over the past 2 weeks, they've traveled 400 kilometers by foot. A protest march with one goal: to demand Westminster get Brexit done. Thomas Daigle spent some time with them along the way.
What do we want? Brexit!
These people have been marching through towns and villages across England to let everyone know Britain needs to get out of the European Union as soon as possible, with or without a deal. They want everyone to know that.
We won't accept anything other than a clean Brexit, which is what the people voted for in 2016.
How do you feel about the way Theresa May has handled Brexit?
Very, very badly.
When you hear terms like a cliff edge or a crash out or a no deal being a worst case scenario, what is your response to that?
Well, it's complete rubbish. This has been invented by the Remain media, who are against us and actually pump out propaganda all the time.
We will be happy if it costs us £1,000 or £1,500 a year, as long as at the end of it all we're out and we can make our own decisions.
This march has been going on for 2 weeks. There have been smaller crowds and bigger crowds, upwards of 100 people taking part, and it's come to represent Brexit, a slow walk out of the European Union. The difference is this is coming to an end, and there's no indication when Brexit will fully be done. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Little Missenden, England.
You can be sitting here in the winter or in the back garden and you just hear a huge bang and you know that it's a hit.
Residents in this neighborhood say trucks are constantly crashing into this low bridge. Coming up, we'll introduce you to one woman who's documented every accident over the last year and is asking for change.
Well, I would like it to stop for the sake of everybody, but I don't really know how.
Premier Doug Ford weighed in on the layoffs at the Fiat Chrysler plant today. Ford is pledging his support for the workers.
I have a message for every worker at FCA in Windsor, their spouses, their children, and the workers and their families who depend on FCA supply chain. I share your disappointment, but I also share your resolve. No matter what happens next, our government will always stand behind you and will always fight for you.
The reality of those cuts at Fiat Chrysler is sinking in today. 1,500 workers will lose their jobs, and the ripple effects will impact hundreds of other families. Jason Vio has the latest now from Windsor.
Workers coming out of this plant here today say they are just in pure shock. They're devastated by the news that came down yesterday, and they're unsure really what their future looks like at this point after those layoffs will come down in September. And they kind of describe the mood on the shop floor today as depressing and quiet.
The reality is that I'm not the only one.
These sisters are third-generation auto workers. They know their jobs are at risk.
I don't know what I'm going to do. I have a house, I have a mortgage, I have a truck, I have payments, I have my kids, college and braces and everything. I don't know how I'm going to do it.
I'm telling you right now, that place closes shop and it'll be a ghost town. It'll definitely be a ghost town. It's not just Chrysler's, it's everywhere.
Some of these families may have to start over. That's the fear for many of the 1,500 workers who will be out of a job in 6 months.
It's a big blow, something we're not accustomed to here in Windsor, running 3 shifts for 25 years.
Things have been getting worse in recent months. Sales of the Chrysler Pacifica minivan have not met its initial hype. Fiat Chrysler says cutting jobs is to help balance supply with global demand.
If there is a silver lining, to the extent that there's a silver lining here, at least this is happening at a time when our economy, our local economy, is doing quite well. So that there are a lot of employers here who have signs up. They're looking for people to fill jobs.
The city is working in overdrive to help find jobs for the hundreds of people who will be affected. The company will offer retirement packages to those who are eligible.
So it's nice to see you here.
Federal politicians also came to town. The Windsor-made Pacifica hybrid was excluded from this hybrid electric car rebate outlined in the federal budget just last week.
Very, very hurtful, very disrespectful.
That changed today.
That rebate of up to $5,000 actually will apply to the Pacifica.
Unifor Local 444, which represents the 6,100 workers at the plant, says it's not giving up. They hope from now until September they're able to save these jobs, possibly by getting a new product in this facility. Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
Ontario's launching new mental health supports for OPP officers after more than a dozen have died by suicide in the last few years.
It is estimated that over a 30-year career, a frontline police officer is exposed to more than 900 traumatic events. These can include very serious incidents, such as a fatal car crash, murder victims, sexual assault victims, and child fatalities. You carry these experiences with you, and if left untreated, that can lead to tragic results.
Jones says the OPP is facing a mental health crisis, with 13 officers having taken their own lives since 2012. The province will partner with the Ontario Provincial Police Association to deliver the program. While details are still being sorted out, the province says it hopes to tackle the issue of stigma through the new supports. The OPP launched its own internal review last summer, while Ontario's chief coroner is also looking into the issue. In the last year alone, 8 active officers and 1 recently retired officer died by suicide. It's loud, creates a lot of mess, and it keeps happening. Residents in the Annex say they're dealing with a nightmare neighbor, a particularly low rail bridge. And no matter how many signs are added to alert drivers of its height, trucks are constantly smashing into the Howlands Avenue Bridge. To prove just how bad it is, one woman decided to start documenting the incidents. Taylor Simmons sat down with her.
April, there were 2. May, there were, 3.
For almost 2 decades, Morag Carlson has listened to dozens of thunderous crashes from trucks hitting a low underpass just outside her home.
You can be sitting here in the winter or in the back garden and you just hear a huge bang and you know that it's a hit. Even although the hit is loud, some of them back up and drive off. And so the whole thing is over in 2 or 3 minutes. But then there are the what I call the big hits.
Missing the signage, lights, and warnings, some trucks end up stuck under the bridge or ripped open.
I would like it to stop for the sake of everybody.
CBC Toronto spoke to Carlson after a particularly bad accident last March. She said crashes at the bridge happened all the time, and that day she started a record to prove it. By her count, there's been 35 crashes since last March. Toronto police have recorded 5.
How do people usually respond when you bring this to them and say there's been 35 in 1 year?
Well, everybody gasps.
The city's transportation department says they adjusted signage in 2018, but the sign you see in this footage from last year is now gone. Residents say nothing's helped.
I'm not kidding you that we probably see 3 or 4 crashes like a month. And this is a very kind of big blue-collar thoroughfare as well, DuPont Street. So you do get massive trucks going back and forth. They should do something about it.
We spoke to the local councillor's office. They say they are aware of the complaints and are looking at changing signage or even putting a bigger slope in the roadway. But we spoke to an expert who says there may be some easier solutions.
It could be something as simple as an overhead sign that can be hanging similar to something you'd see in an underground parking garage. That wouldn't do any damage to a truck that were to hit it. It would alert the truck driver that they're not going to make it.
Still, this truck driving instructor says it's up to the person behind the wheel to pay attention.
Usually you plan the route and then you have a backup route on any job, anywhere, anytime. You know, especially with trucks, they're not toys.
The owner of the bridge, Canadian Pacific Railway, says they do a safety inspection after every reported accident, but they wouldn't say how many they've done this year or if they've done repairs. Taylor Simmons, CBC News, Toronto.
They have heard the Happy Birthday song for almost a century now, and today a group of them were honored in the Shepherd Village senior community. Greg Ross was there to celebrate with them.
Happy birthday to you.
This was no ordinary birthday celebration.
Happy birthday to you.
These residents at Shepherd Village Senior Community who were celebrating recent birthdays are all over the age of 95.
107, ladies and gentlemen.
It's almost hard to believe that in 3 days, Olive Meyer will be 107 years old.
I feel great.
You look great. She says the key to staying young is
eating healthy.
There to celebrate with her, her 83-year-old son, Wade. He's just a young whippersnapper.
I guess we've inherited some good genes.
And he says he also inherited his mother's sense of humor.
When she was young, I remember she always played tricks on people.
Joyce Warren, who turned 97 in January, says a lot has changed since she was a little girl. Do you have an iPhone?
Are you kidding? I've got a dial phone. I love it.
Sharing in the festivities, this young couple in their 80s, not there for a birthday though.
Happy anniversary to you.
They recently celebrated their 62nd wedding anniversary, and they had plenty of wisdom to share on having a long marriage.
Well, the secret, I guess you have to keep a smile even when it hurts.
I feel like a teenager.
77-year-old Norm Kelly, who was a city councillor in Toronto for 25 years, says there are some lessons to be learned from the guests of honor at this party.
Age, in many respects, is more than, you know, your physical body. It's what's up here.
It was a head table that has lived through history that most of us can only read about in books.
They have a wealth of life that they have lived, that they have shared.
The next birthday celebration at Shepherd Village will be in September, with dozens more over the age of 95 being celebrated. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
And Colette, since you're too young to know, a dial phone, it's like back in the day we used to have phones that you actually had a dial on it that you had to turn and stuff to call people. Yeah.
Maybe you can show me a picture later or something.
I'll show you later. You'd have to plug it into the wall and everything.
Oh, sounds crazy.
Also crazy, how about the weather that we're seeing coming in this weekend? All right, it's not atypical because this does happen. We are in spring, and spring is a month where things kind of go up and down. So because it's also the weekend we're heading into, I want you to know about a few things going on in terms of special weather statements like this one. So to the north of the city and GTA, we're talking about that freezing rain risk and then getting into some snow, especially the further north you travel. And over towards the east, as we go further to the north and east, we get into not only snow but freezing rain, and in fact towards the Ottawa Valley, including Ottawa, a freezing rain warning. So any of you kind of taking off on the roads this weekend or in any manner, that's something I want you to kind of look into before you time things out of how you're going to be moving around. Our current temperatures, 11 degrees, easy to move around with all that sunshine today, double digits. It's just everything is going to be changing. It's fine right now. It's through the overnight. So this is actually going to be after midnight when we'll see the system that's still back in the Midwest is going to be moving in, and we'll see those showers, what will be mostly showers in terms of this system coming through for the GTA. But not only that, let's time it out for you as we take you in then towards tomorrow morning. Rain, where you see the pink, getting some of that colder air overriding, the warmer air overriding colder air at the surface. We get into the freezing rain, some snow to the north from there. Saturday, later in the day, I think we'll see breaks in the precipitation, but then the winds turned around towards the northwest, colder air comes in, and some wet flurries or even a little bit of light snow for the city, but further north, that's where we get into some accumulations of maybe 5 to even 10 centimeters up into northern cottage country. In terms of the rainfall, somewhere around 20 to 30 millimeters with this system as it moves through the city. And then with the snowfall, now I think the models are going way too heavy with this, but I need you to know, say maybe half of that. It's possible to be very wet and it's going to melt, but 1 to 3 centimeters or so could be coming through the city, and you wake up to that on Sunday morning. You need to know about that. Overnight tonight, 1 to 3 for the overnight lows with those showers developing and freezing rain to the north and some slick roadways. Tomorrow, the highs much cooler than today, so 5 to 7. That'll be in the later afternoon, early evening hours when we get there. Sunday, maybe seeing some sunny breaks in the later afternoon, but a much cooler day, 2 degrees. And then Monday through Wednesday, the temperatures will be rising. We'll be calling those numbers up on a rotary phone.
You're going to get me for that later. Thank you, Colin.
Yeah. You're welcome.
You thought food prices here are bad?
I paid $9.99.
The CBC Marketplace investigation that compares prices from up north with the rest of Canada next. A warning now, our next story contains information that's difficult to hear and may be a trigger for some. This is day 4 of the domestic assault trial of Joshua Boyle. He and his wife were held hostage in Afghanistan. As David Thurton tells us now, she is testifying about alleged physical and sexual assault she experienced at his hands here in Canada.
Caitlin Coleman described in difficult detail the assault she says she experienced from her estranged husband, Joshua Boyle. Today she spoke about several alleged instances of physical and sexual assault while they lived in Ottawa, including the one she said that was the most difficult. Coleman testified that she began her new life in Canada after 5 years of abuse from her captors in Afghanistan. But she says it was a new life of physical violence and sexual bondage, this time at the hands of her husband, she alleges. She described a life where trivial things were controlled by her husband. If she would disagree, he would explode with rage, she recalled. The accused, Boyle, is out on bail. He denies all of the allegations. He has pleaded not guilty to all 19 charges. Today, he listened in court as his estranged wife shared intimate details, including one November day when the two got into an argument. His anger erupted, she alleges. He slapped her while one of their children was strapped to her chest. 10 days later, Boyle demanded that his wife submit to sex that she considered inappropriate, and she said no. He then allegedly knocked her to the ground, tied her up, and had sex with her against her will. When he was finished, she says he left her bound in ropes for the rest of the night. The trial continues Monday. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
The mayor is expressing concern tonight over the provincial government's plan to cut the number of supervised injection sites in Toronto. The Ford government announcing today it's capping the number of sites across the province. 6 sites have been approved in Toronto. City Councilor Joe Cressy says 3 sites in the city that are already up and running were told today they will have to close by Monday. According to Public Health Ontario, more than 1,200 people died from overdoses in the province in 2017. The latest data from early 2018 shows 600 people died in the first half of last year. Now, in a statement issued just minutes ago, the mayor calls the sites one of the best tools we have right now to help save lives, and that he intends to register strong concern with provincial government officials. Would you pay $32 for laundry detergent? In Canada's north, there may not be another option. Grocery prices are often double what they are in the rest of Canada, in spite of a federal program to subsidize those costs. And as David Common and the team at CBC Marketplace found, the problem of hunger has actually gotten worse since the subsidy began.
We paired 2 moms for a cross-country price check. How much did you pay for your pickles?
$5.39, and I thought that was quite expensive.
I paid $9.99.
So what's the difference? Megan Brisebois lives in Manitoba. Joellen Pamiolik is in Nunavut, where groceries can cost twice as much.
And then we also bought a case of water.
We did too.
It was $4.49.
I paid $29.95.
What?
With no road access to Nunavut, fresh food has to be flown up. That's expensive, so the federal government spends $100 million a year subsidizing certain items. Meat, fruit, veg, and dairy prices are reduced, but other items aren't. It leaves many people making choices about what to buy and what to leave. It also means 7 in 10 kids in Nunavut go to bed hungry.
It hurts to know that a child my daughter's age, who's only 5, is actually hungry. It hurts. I can't imagine, and that's my daughter.
In fact, since the federal government began the Nutrition North subsidy 8 years ago, even more people are going hungry, unable to access nutritious food.
I grew up in Labrador.
The government's point person on Nutrition North is Yvonne Jones.
Why should anybody have confidence that Nutrition North remains any part of the solution now?
Nutrition North is one component. The problem has been thinking that Nutrition North alone could fix food insecurity.
But you've been part of the government for 4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
This is still a problem.
It is still a problem, but it's one that's getting addressed, and I think that's the key piece right now.
Many Inuit are skeptical and suspicious, wondering how such hunger continues to exist in their communities in spite of an expensive federal program. David Common, CBC News, Iqaluit.
Watch the full investigation tonight on Marketplace at 8 p.m. on CBC television, or stream it by downloading the CBC Gem app. It is a Walt Disney classic brought to life. Does this real-life Dumbo still have the magic of the original animated version? Eli Glasner joins us with his review next.
We're all family here, no matter how small.
Dumbo is back on the big screen. The Disney classic first hit theaters way back in 1941. But will audiences in 2019 believe an elephant can fly? Eli Glasner is here with his review. Tim Burton doing this one. Eli, what attracted him to this story, you think?
I think I can figure out what attracted him, because you look at the original, right? I mean, you got to tip your hat to Walt Disney. His willingness to scar generations of children. I mean, just the sadness and sorrow. That was a dark story, right? That elephant being torn from his mother. So, of course, who better than Captain Gloom himself, director Tim Burton, to bring this movie back to life. But here's the thing about the original Dumbo, only 64 minutes. So we need to add a lot of new stuff. And so let me explain that story. We begin in 1919, a struggling circus in Florida. Colin Farrell plays a veteran, just came home from World War I to see his two adorable children. Now, he lost his arm. They lost their mother to an illness already before he came back. And so lots of sadness, lots of gloominess in the air. He gets demoted, so he's now taking care of the elephants. There's a new baby elephant, but as you saw, there's something a little different about this elephant. Big, silly ears. What to do? Well, the kids decide they're going to teach the elephant a trick with a feather. Let's look.
Baby Jumbo, look at me. Do what I do. Blow. No, not the feather. Your ears. Blow. He thinks it's a game. Let me have a turn.
Wait. And we have liftoff. So there you go. Circus problem solved. People are going to start coming to see this flying, somewhat wobbly, levitating elephant. And he's so successful that already a new character arrives. Michael Keaton as V.A. Vandermeer. He's this amusement park huckster. So he wants to strike a deal with the owner of the circus, Danny DeVito. Look, anytime you got DeVito and Keaton together in a room, have to show you this. So Max, the owner, is trying to do some entertaining, but you'll see there's a little distraction in the room.
I would like to offer you a drink, but all out of bourbon, and cognac and scotch. Not now.
Is that a monkey in your desk?
Just for emergencies.
It's like a master class in deadpan, right? Is that a monkey in your desk? Just for emergencies. There you go.
Certainly a lot of affection for the original. How well does this new version work?
You know those automatons they have at some of the Walt Disney rides, those robots that look almost lifelike and very well crafted? You see where I'm going? It's like that. It's this corporate kind of soulless endeavor. I mean, it's gorgeous to look at. You see the beautiful colors, the peeling paint, the sun perpetually rising or falling. Even the two children have been fed through the Tim Burton Gloomatron, where they have that same look, the pale faces, the big eyes, the high forehead. And then there's Colin Farrell playing the cowboy character who's got this southern accent by way of Dublin. And then there's Michael Keaton, who, you know, no one gave him the sad, strange memo, so he's playing, I don't know if he's a carny or Daddy Warbucks or something in the middle. And this all leads up to this artificial climax in Coney Island, where suddenly they take a page from Ocean's 11, and the circus folk are trying to organize a scheme to get the elephants back together.
Dumbo. Does Dumbo save it, though, Eli? That's the big question. How about the elephant?
So Dumbo is computer animated, CGI, and he has these big, sad blue eyes, but I'm sorry, I didn't really believe in this Dumbo. I didn't really connect with this Dumbo. Now, I know you're surprised to hear this. I've been thinking very hard. What went wrong with Dumbo? It's the ears. You look at the original Dumbo, those ears, it's not just about flight. It was how he expressed himself, right? It was the talking mouth. When Dumbo was happy, the ears went up. When Dumbo was sad, they drooped. Dumbo would hide behind the ears. He would shelter himself with the ears. Well, now that we're in this realistic world where a flying elephant just looks strange, it doesn't really work. The magic is gone. And so 2 stars out of 5. You know, rent the original. It is still powerful and lovely. I mean, you'll have to talk about some things in it, but it's so much better than this one.
Thank you, Eli.
You're welcome.
Looking for a winning roti? I'm always looking for that. Look no further than the beaches. Take a look at what the Amma Roti House near Queen and Woodbine has on offer.
At Amma Roti House, I'm making the rotis and create rotis and doing this curry. My name is Raju Thapa. The name of restaurant is Amma Roti House. We are located beaches area. Aloo parotha is topping with this roti, which I create the roti and flat grills. We are making the flat grill and cut it in the 4 pieces. Lamb korma, the lamb which are put into the water and they heat it up very slow heat, and after we add this cashew and the cream, touch of creams and the korma spices and homemade spices also, and we're ready to for serve.
We got a few seconds.
Only a few, because I really need you to explain how these strange phones without batteries
that rotary phone that
Since I'm not old enough.
You don't know, Colette.
You don't charge it?
No, you don't charge it. We have to do it off air. We have to do it off air. But winter's coming this weekend.
Yeah, it's making a return appearance. So we do have a wintry mix, mostly a rain event for the city, but Sunday morning we could have a dusting of some snow.
Sorry about the phone joke. Have a great weekend, everybody.